Hello, trauma warriors. I'm Janae with Defeating Childhood Trauma, and today I want to drop a little bonus content based on my own lived and learned experience with coercive control. It's an example of the material that we have been covering so far. Stage one, love bombing, and stage two, intermittent reinforcement with gaslighting and isolation and enmeshment. Because I am a firm believer that academic understanding of what's going on in coercive control only takes us so far, but nothing brings us a deeper understanding than other people's lived experiences. Since I have been happily married to a wonderful man for 19 years, that means the story is going way back in time to the year 2001. I was 26 years old when I met a man we shall call narcissist incarnate. I saw this man who looked like a soap opera star. I mean, he was so drop dead gorgeous. And this is something I've noticed again that these cluster B disorders have, not all of them. And I'm not saying that all beautiful people are cluster Bs or vice versa, just that the vast majority of cluster Bs tend to be well above average in the appearance department. I was out with my friends at a bar when I met him as a friendly acquaintance of my crowd of friends. He was so charming and down to earth and friendly. And there was this charismatic aura about him that I can't fully explain to this very day. I felt very drawn to him almost instantly. So he was hanging out with us, and I remember one of my friends teasing him at some point about being a playboy. And he said, "No way. I am a one woman man all the way." And he kept reiterating this and adding a little seasoning to his moral high standing. But spoiler alert, this man would actually turn out to be equal parts narcissistic personality disorder and histrionic. Plus, reigning in third place was meeting just enough of the criteria to also qualify for antisocial personality disorder. But see, the year was 2001. Not many of us had heard about personality disorders, much less different types out there. And when you don't even know there's a name for it, what are the chances of understanding red flags? None. That's what. So, anyway, as the night progresses, he seems to be showing more and more interest in me. And all the while, I'm over here thinking, oh my God, this knock dead gorgeous guy is interested in someone like me? I can't believe it. Thus began the stage one of coercive control, love bombing. It lasted 3 whole weeks, and let me tell you how it went. His first time at my apartment, he brought, swear to God, 2 VHS tapes. Yes, we were still using VHS. He brought 2 videos of him playing flag football. He wanted us to watch these videos of his 32-year-old self playing football and compliment him on how amazing of a jock he was. And yes, if you're familiar with the movie Napoleon Dynamite, it was a classic Uncle Rico moment. But of course, that movie hadn't yet come out. He was rocking my world in the bedroom and was surprisingly showing some mild signs of jealousy. Like when he found out I had more guy friends than girlfriends, he said, "Well, you would never cheat on me, would you?" And I was like, wow, this guy's so into me. There's something about me that's making him, with all these morals and great looks, feel so insecure about me. He's really, really into me because he wanted to know where I was and what I was doing. And he confided, Every woman I ever loved has cheated on me, and that's why I'm so paranoid of it happening again. So I really need to know before I invest all these feelings and get too involved with you. Would you ever cheat on me? Because I'm so scared of that. And I was like, no, I would never cheat on you. Spoiler alert, he was liar, liar, pants on fire. He was never cheated on. He was the one who cheated on every woman in his life. But I wouldn't know any of that yet. Oh, and he missed me so much and couldn't get me out of his head. And his favorite line, I've just never been this comfortable around anyone before. I don't understand this. So by week 2 or 3, he tells me, I love you. And I was like, oh my God, I love you too. I want to share this insight from my experiences. I truly do believe that a lot of the love bombing and why it's so effective is that they are doing things in some way that's making us, with this low self esteem, fall in love with ourselves. It's something to think about because I do remember feeling so amazing. Like I was at the top of the world because I had this amazing guy that I was connecting with and bonding with, and we just had so much between us in such a short period of time. Anyway, after we dropped the big L word on each other, we immediately started talking about living together. And so I said, hey, I have an apartment. I live by myself. You should move in with me. So we made our plans for his move in date, and you cannot make this up. The very day he brought over all his stuff to officially start living with me, I get my first phone call from one of my friends. And she tells me this man has not been faithful to me. She proceeded to drop a name of a person I didn't know, but she knew this person who told her that just last night, Narcissus Incarnate had tried and failed to jump this girl's bones and left a mark on her neck as proof. So I get off the phone with my friend and I tell him what my friend just told me. He opened his cell phone and said, no, she tried to come on to me and I can prove it. He played a short but provocative voicemail message that she had left him. As I would learn later, she had left that message as a joke, but he took it seriously and thought she definitely wanted him because, hey, Narcissus Incarnate believed that everybody wanted him anyway. I wouldn't find this out until later, of course. So anyway, there's this provocative message being left on the phone. I'm like, oh, okay, now I get it. Yay, it was a misunderstanding. And that girl tried to lie on my boyfriend. But that wouldn't be the only phone call I would get during this relationship. The phone calls kept coming up. He was spotted here while you were at work. And oh, by the way, at the time I worked night shift at the airport. So this was the perfect setup for him, who enjoyed the nightlife and the partying and all of the mess that he was doing behind my back while I was completely oblivious. Here were my friends who also enjoyed the nightlife telling me, oh, he was spotted here doing this with a girl. Oh, we just heard from another girl that she had sex with him just the other night. I am telling him what my friends are starting to say and where he's been spotted, etc. And the first of many ultimatums began. He got very wrathful and said, I didn't want it to come to this, but you're just going to have to make a choice. Your friends or me? Because if you're going to keep those friends, then I'm out of here. I'm moving out. And because I was hooked, line, and sinker in this trauma bond, because this extreme high that he was giving me misled me into thinking, I have never loved anyone like this in my life. I can't live without him. What will I do? So I chose him. And most of my other friends worked at the airport with me. Working night shift meant that by the time we get off work, it would be breakfast time basically, because we could see the sun coming up. And now and again, we would meet up for breakfast instead of all of us going straight home. Well, that started declining once Narcissus Incarnate entered my life. I would call him because he always wanted to know where I was, because he always missed me so much. So I called to say, hey, we're going to go to breakfast and I'll be home afterwards. And he said, no, please come home to me. I miss you so much. I'm like, but I'm only going to be away for an extra hour or so. No, I want to see you now. And another time, he had a bad night. Bless his heart. He needed me to come straight home and comfort him because he had such a bad night. Please, just this one time. And next thing I know, one of my friends pointed out, what? You gotta ask permission to hang out with us? And I'm like, no, it isn't like that. I was defensive because I love my narcissist. And then when occasionally it was okay for me to go hang out with my friends, always having breakfast, not doing anything wrong, guess what would happen? Oh, let me go ahead and say this. We did have cell phones in 2001, just not everyone. I didn't have a cell phone. I was still on landline. So this made it even more embarrassing. He would call the restaurant and have them ask for me so that he could talk to me while I was at the restaurant. I cannot tell you how embarrassing that was. This secondhand embarrassment, too, you get because all I could think was, how are you not seeing you're embarrassing yourself by doing this? Calling the restaurant to page me to answer their business phone? Sometimes he'd say, oh, I love you. This is all. I just wanted to call and tell you that. Or there was another time he called the restaurant to page me and he proceeded to go off on me. The woman I love that I want to marry just forgot about me. And he kept saying this over and over again. Classic Darvo, gotta give himself the victim card. Oh, and here's the best part. I forgot to mention this too. It turns out when he moved in with me, he didn't have a job anymore. Weird. And he continued to be unemployed the entire time he lived with me. So here he is having this free life while living off of me and controlling me. The drama begins to escalate. He's creating problems where none should be. He can't understand why I can't drop everything to attend his needs whenever he wants. He once gave me a hard time because he was hanging out with the guy who lived one floor above me. And he was mad because I had to go to work and I did not take the 15 seconds to go up there and give him a hug and a kiss before I left. He kept repeating that one too. 15 seconds for a hug and a kiss. You couldn't give me 15 seconds. By this point, all of my friends hate his guts. They cannot stand him, and he knows it. So he doesn't want me hanging out with them. He's getting increasingly paranoid jealous of me. If I spent more than 10 minutes in front of the mirror getting ready for work, he would ask me, who are you getting dolled up for? And he would constantly bring that up, accusing me of getting dolled up for work. But it was okay for him to take all the time in the world grooming himself before going out while I was at work. And I said, you don't see this contradiction? It's okay for you to spend all this time in front of the mirror getting ready to go out, but I can't spend more than 10 minutes in front of the mirror getting ready for work. It was always different for him versus me. It's also important to note that working at the airport, loading and unloading planes all night, you're working outside in all types of weather. So, coming home from work after a cold and rainy night, wanting to soak in the tub and get some heat back in my body, he would ask me, "What are you really washing off?" And it was around this time, it was starting to dawn on me that he reminded me of my mother. That in fact, I was dating my mother, who was not narcissistic or borderline or histrionic. I'm sorry. She wasn't narc or histrionic. She was a borderline. But again, I wouldn't know that until over a decade later. He would start fights and then be like, "I'm moving out." And he would be gone all night, sometimes 2 nights. And I know now these were nights he was intentionally starting a fight so that he could cheat while I was unaware. There were a couple of times he would up the ante and take all his stuff, pile it into his truck, and be gone for a few days. And then come back, of course, with all his stuff. As always, it was all my fault. I wasn't doing enough. He couldn't trust me, etc., etc. There were times I would get fed up with all the drama, but then we would always have a conversation. It was strange. No matter what he did, we would have a conversation and boom, I would be hooked right back in. There was a song that came out in 2001, "I Keep Falling" by Alicia Keys. In that song, she is describing the trauma bond itself. Part of the lyrics, I don't want to commit copyright infringement, but listen to the song carefully. She says, "I keep falling in and out of love with you. I have never loved someone the way that I love you." And when I heard that song, I said, "Oh my God, this is me. This song is how I feel about him." And there was also the future faking. He wanted to move back to his hometown, several states away, and take me with him. According to him, everything would be so much better for us, but only if we moved away. I think this was the part where he really messed up and also saved me from sinking into stage 3 and then stage 4 of coercive control. Because every time he pressured me into moving away and marrying him, also reminded me of two very good reasons not to. Number one, that would mean taking me far away from my grandmother, who was the first great love of my life, the most important person of my childhood. And I always swore I would never live far away from my grandmother as long as she was alive. So that was one thing. And another thing was because he reminded me so much of my mother, I was able to see my future because I grew up watching my father get whittled down day by day, year after year. I was born just 1 year after my parents were married. So I witnessed him sink into stage 3 and then stage 4, even though I didn't know there was a name for it at the time. I knew how much worse this relationship would get because I already watched what happened to my father. It was a constant reminder that all those years I had grown up in such a hurry. I couldn't wait to turn 18 so that I could finally legally leave my abuser. And marrying narcissist incarnate and moving far away with him would send me straight back into the same hell. Just different names involved this time. Childhood repeated. I couldn't. And yet, I still didn't have the strength to let him go. On one hand, I feared living the rest of my life in an abusive, controlling relationship. And on the other hand, I was in fear that I would never love anyone like this ever again. The trauma bond had me convinced that no matter what happened, I was doomed to love him and only him for the rest of my life. So around this time, I learned the term personality disorder. was like, oh, this is a psychological condition? Really? And from what I've described about my boyfriend, he has this? Oh, so I get on the internet. Yes, it's dial up. And I found the 9 criteria for narcissistic personality disorder, followed by a short piece written by a psychologist talking about narcissists are rare, only 1 to 2% of the population has it. And they did not know much about narcissists or how to treat them purely because narcissists are not inclined to seek therapy because they believe everyone else is the problem and there's nothing wrong with them. So, anyway, when I read this criteria, I said, oh my God, this is him. He meets all 9. I was a few years away from learning about histrionic and antisocial and realizing he had those too. The information on the internet at the time was pretty scant, but at least I found one of his disorders and was able to make sense of what I had been dealing with. So, having this information, as limited as it was on narcissistic personality disorder, my knee-jerk reaction, all because I love my boo so much, I was going to save him from his narcissism. So I wrote him a life manual. I kid you not. I wrote him a life manual on right choice versus wrong choice, common sense, human decency, fairness, all of that. I threw so much energy and love into this life manual. But you won't believe what happened next. Narcissus Incarnate completely rejected my life manual. Oh no, now what? So here I was, learning more about narcissistic personality disorder, focused only on that one, and at the time, still going through the drama of, oh my God, this is hopeless, this is bad, really bad. My boyfriend is a narcissist. Then another song came out that also spoke to my soul. It was one of those nights I was driving to work, upset over the latest drama my boyfriend had stirred up. And I heard a song by Mary J. Blige, No More Drama. It spoke to me. I was like, yes, I'm so tired. I'm so exhausted from all this drama. I have got to escape this. I want what Mary J. Blige is singing in this song, No More Drama. And I can't explain what happened next. I think between learning narcissistic personality disorder and the divine timing of Mary J. Blige's song coming out when it did something to me. Literally, one night I went to bed believing I was doomed to love this man for the rest of my life. And the next day, swear to God, it was like the spell had broken because I did feel like I was under this really weird spell the whole time I was with him. When I woke up that morning, I didn't love him anymore. It was like the trauma bond was broken. I felt nothing for him. But throughout this relationship that spanned 8 months, I had picked up on patterns where I had been at that point before, where I told myself, I don't love him anymore because all of the drama is outweighing those beautiful moments in between the drama. The pattern was every time we had a conversation, I was hooked back in. So I devised a plan to trigger him into wanting to leave me one more time and do the over the top walking out on me, taking all of his stuff so that he wouldn't have a reason to return. And then I vowed I would not answer the phone. I would screen my calls so that I would not risk having a conversation with him. And that's going to be an important takeaway as we move into the series on coercive control. You will see how that really is one of their superpowers. Having that conversation will hook you back in the same as it did me. But I didn't know there was a name for it then. I just knew what the most common pattern for me had been. He sensed the shift in me almost instantly. And this is something important for you guys out there wanting to know how to escape a relationship like this. Always have some sort of exit plan in whatever you do. Do not let them know you're leaving or want them gone from your life. Because I'm telling you right now that what the cluster bees lack in common sense human decency, they more than make up for it with their intuition. It can't be reiterated enough that they become the most unstable at the threat of being abandoned by their victim. For myself, I was lucky that narcissist incarnate was the somatic narcissist, which is narcissistic personality plus histrionic. And then the antisocial side of him that came in third meant that while, yes, he did have the malignant narcissist side, being domineering and controlling in our relationship, he was far more the disingenuous histrionic than the malignant narcissist. In other words, things could have been far more physically dangerous for me at this time had it been the reverse. His high impulsivity without any foresight and his chronic need for stimulation and excitement would get the better of him soon enough. For 3 weeks, I watched him try and be on his best behavior around me. He would make a couple of comments like, "It feels like you don't love me anymore." And another time, him calmly asking me, "Do you want me to leave?" Even though inside my head I was screaming, "Yes." I wisely and calmly said no, because if I said yes, we would have a conversation, and I was scared of being hooked back into this trauma bond that I didn't even know there was a name for. I did not want to fall back in love with him again. I wanted to keep this apathy in my heart forever. I was emotionally free from him, but not yet physically. And I know that's so strange because usually when breaking the trauma bond, it's the reverse. You break free physically and then you have the emotional withdrawals. And yet I was in danger of getting emotionally hooked again as long as he remained in my physical life. Every day for 3 weeks, I would intentionally bring up something that I knew would trigger him. And I watched him get angry and then promptly work hard at controlling his wrath. Christmas was just around the corner, and all I could think was, all I want for Christmas is this man gone from my life. Then it happened one day when I informed him. I did not ask permission, but I informed him that I would be having breakfast after work with my friends. He knew which restaurant, and he decided to call the restaurant. When they paged me, and I had to go up there and answer the business phone. Excuse me. "Hey, honey, I'm just calling to say I love you." I let him have it. I laundry listed every manipulative and needy demands he had ever made on me, and that I was sick of it. Then I said the magic words. I played reverse psychology and turned his manipulation game around on him. I said, "And you know what else I'm fed up with? How you're always threatening to leave me. But you're always saying you're going to leave me, but I got your number now. You will never leave me. You know how I know? Because you always come back. So you can stop playing that little game right now." And see, I dared him to leave me. Today, December 15th, is the 23rd year anniversary of the happiest day of my life, because that was the date in 2001 when I came home to an apartment that not only did not have him in it, but all of his things were gone too. I arrogantly told him, "You will never leave me," and he couldn't wait to show me. That high impulsivity within him made him react without thinking, without reviewing what he knew had changed within me the past 3 weeks, nor was he thinking of the consequences after he left. He started calling me right away, but I wasn't answering the phone. He was leaving messages on my answering machine every day, sometimes twice a day, trying to get me to talk to him, trying to love bomb me, but I deleted the messages as they came in. I also had the good sense to talk with the guy who lived one floor above me that he was friends with and explain the situation. That I just got rid of this guy, and hey, look, I'm not asking you to stop being friends with him, but all I am asking is if you hang out with him again, please do not bring him back into the apartment building. It was a secure building, and the only way he could get in was if someone let him in. So if he got inside the building and went to the guy's apartment unit, he would literally be one floor away from getting at me, and I was scared. Well, the phone call stopped abruptly after a week. So I called the guy who lived one floor above me, and I asked if he had heard from Narcissus Incarnate, and most importantly, if he had moved away yet. Because while Narcissus Incarnate was in my life, he kept telling me the only reason he's staying in my town is because of me. He wanted me to move away with him to his hometown. So the guy told me that he had moved away. And that gave me a huge rush of relief because now I was in no danger of running into him anywhere. But then he proceeded to tell me how Narcissus Incarnate got the message that I was in no way, shape, or form ever going to take him back. They had been hanging out at a bar, and Narcissus Incarnate kept pushing him to tell him how I had been doing, and even told the guy that he knew I wasn't doing well because every time he had left me before, I couldn't handle being in my own apartment without him. So as the night went on and the guy consumed more alcohol, it loosened his lips until he finally told him, Janae is ecstatic that you're gone, and she's so happy that she can finally be around her friends again. And then Narcissus Incarnate's response was, she really said that? Well, fine. You just remember one thing. I left her. He sure did. And I made sure that he could never come back. Once I got rid of him, let me tell you, I fell head over heels in love with life itself. I had so much freedom that I had taken for granted up until I got rid of him. Just being elated at the grocery store the first time I realized I only had to buy for one. I did not have to think about buying anything for him. The freedom to be in front of the mirror, getting ready for work longer than 10 minutes and not having to answer for it. All the freedom. Every day there was something that just made me so jovial on the inside because he had taken away so much. I was re-experiencing freedom. I survived the first 2 stages of coercive control. But then again, our relationship only lasted 6 months. But I can tell you this, I nightmared about him for 6 months after I got rid of him. While yes, I was enjoying life to the fullest in my waking life, I was nightmaring in my sleep. Then one day, fed up with the nightmares, I wrote him a letter that I never intended to send, telling him I wanted him out of my life for good and forbid him from entering my dreams. It worked. Even the nightmares stopped. Those first 2 stages of coercive control that I dealt with were traumatic, but to be perfectly honest, I get so much post-traumatic growth out of it that I enjoy sharing this time of my life because it helps others. I understand more of where people are coming from in a coercive control relationship and understand how in these relationships they get you to do things you wouldn't normally do. And that's where a lot of shame comes from. I would have never imagined myself allowing someone to live with me, unemployed, serial cheating on me, and controlling my every move. I was very ashamed of what I was allowing, but I didn't have the strength to sever ties with my abuser. It made me not want to confide everything because of that shame. So I just want to tell people out there being led to do things that you wouldn't normally do in these types of relationships are actually a very normal response to a relationship that is completely abnormal. But that was my relationship rock bottom. He wasn't the first narcissist I ever dated, but he was the worst, the most severely controlling, because before I definitely had a specific type who kept confirming and reconfirming for me all of the cruel things that my parents used to say to me because I didn't know how to value anyone who saw value in me. Narcissist incarnate was my wake up call to say no more because I had learned this new term, narcissistic personality disorder and other personality disorders. And it gave me just enough validation to understand the difference between me and the guys that I was attracted to and attracted to me. And I spoke it into existence when I said, no more. I'm not doing it, just like Mary J. Blige said, no more drama. And I meant it. And it just so happened that the next person I dated was my husband. And I can honestly tell you this, he is, in truth, the only man I have ever loved. Because love isn't that chemically induced, intense, extreme crap that the trauma bond tricks us into thinking it is real. Because when you're in love, you've got to have trust. You've got to develop a secure bond where you can be calm and relaxed. The trauma bond will never get you there. And so real love is solid. Real love is peaceful. And that's the thing we as trauma survivors have to learn. Making peace with peace. Learning how to accept peace as the true sexy that's out there. Because believe me, there's nothing sexy, not really, about a trauma bond. Forged in trauma, rising as warriors.